G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee, and welcome back to another episode of r/Am I the A-hole? Apologies for no face cam today, but I will make up for that by saying I appreciate you, and thank you for spending your time here watching my content. Anyway, I want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's bloody good content. Thank you. Posted by user Throwaway CTAS. Titled, Am I the A-hole for refusing to allow the hospital to discharge my wife to me? My wife now has stage 4 colon cancer. For the past year and a half, I've had to work and then come home and do the majority of the household chores. And I was also treated as the nurse. We have 2 sons, 18 male and 16 male, and a daughter, 15 female, that help me out. But it became expected of me to be their go-to parent on everything. A year ago, my wife pretty much stopped being able to do anything for herself. She's exceptionally rude to me, and pretty much screams and cries hysterically all the time, and sometimes mutters on about people who haven't been in our lives for some time. She also blames me for not being kind to her when I am putting my entire life on hold when I'm at home, and I feel like I didn't even have an identity anymore. Over the summer, I've talked to doctors, and they've told me there was a lot of red tape regarding getting my wife into a nursing home. I talked with my dad, 74 male, and he told me that from his understanding, with hospitals, if you didn't pick up a patient after discharge, then 3 days later, the hospital social worker would have to place them into a specialized nursing facility. Last week, my wife had to be rushed to the emergency room. For the week, I didn't have to be her nurse. I realized how much of a strain taking care of a barely lucid and angry when she was lucid woman had become to me. I realized that I was basically being mum and dad around the house, and I was so tired of doing this every single day, and then waking up at 6 to go to work. When I found out my wife was set to be discharged, I ended up making up my mind. When the hospital called to say that they were going to discharge my wife, and I needed to be there to receive her, I told them that I did not want to take care of her anymore. The hospital continuously called me back, and the person on the other line would beseech me to bring my wife home. However, I stood my ground and said that my wife needed to go to a professional nursing facility, and said that the hospital's social workers needed to figure that out. Am I the a-hole for finally realizing that I had reached my limits? My daughter in particular is very upset that her mum is not coming home. My sons screamed at me that they would take care of their mother 24/7 if they had to. However, I knew that the hospital social worker would do his or her job competently and help my wife into a facility. I don't think you've realized that you've reached your limits. I feel like you're just an asshole. Bit of a bait story, but I'll take the bait anyway. Doesn't sound like your wife has much time left if she's at stage 4 colon cancer, and you're just prolonging her suffering. That's an egregious and disgusting thing to do. I don't think that rule applies in this situation, that she would go to a nursing facility. And if anything, you're kind of just shooting yourself in the foot, chest, lungs, eyes, and face for doing this to her. That's an exceptionally evil thing to do to someone, and yes, you are the a-hole. There's no excuse. And the moderator puts here, OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the a-hole. I might be the a-hole because it might seem in my wife's mind that I was abandoning her when I simply cannot keep up this pace of taking care of her. I also might be the a-hole because I upset my kids, who think that they can be their mother's caregiver. Oh my god. Ducal14 says, You're the a-hole. OP, I feel for you. Taking care of someone who is very sick as well as 3 kids and a full-time job, I can sympathize that this is very draining and difficult. However, the way you're going about this is not right and not fair to your wife or your kids. First off, you need to admit that you need help and ask for it. This just seemed like you spent the last year taking on more and more until you burned yourself out. Caregiver burnout is a real thing, and as you've experienced, can hit hard. How about asking one of your parents to come help, or a sibling, or perhaps hire a nurse to come and help you out during the day? Find some way to allow yourself to relax. Making a decision to force your wife into a nursing home isn't fair to her, and it isn't fair to your kids. This needed to be a conversation that you had with your wife and your kids, not something that you all of a sudden decided to force happen. I understand you're burnt out, but throwing your hands up and giving up isn't the right call here. Even if you agree on finding a nursing home, perhaps choosing one with your wife instead of forcing her into whatever the system will provide, spoiler alert, it's probably not going to be very good. Your kids are probably going to hate you for this, so if you're okay with your entire immediate family being very upset with you for a long time, well, kudos, I guess. And Crazy Chrissy replies, "My heart breaks for his wife. Dying, unable to care for herself, torn away from her children, abandoned by the one person who swore to be there. I guess he didn't actually read In Sickness and in Health. Caregiver burnout is real. I understand it logically, but emotionally, imagine being her, laying there, knowing your husband is refusing to get you. I'm literally crying here. I'm going to cling to my husband and hope to God he never turns into that. In mild sickness and preferably always health, for richer and maybe just slightly less richer, till inconvenience do we part." Sheba Doge Bork says, "I'm going with, this is beyond Reddit's pay grade. You and your kids need counseling ASAP. This is unbearable for all parties involved. Also, pretty sure the social worker can get you in legal trouble for abandoning her. You might want to reach out to the social worker and work with them instead of against." And Day Trips Inside Cars says, "I read the statistics once about people who leave their partners when they're severely ill or dying. They are staggeringly high for men, but women almost non-existent. You are the epitome of selfish. You have put your own happiness above that of your dying wife and your 3 children. This is the time for a little self-sacrifice. Sure, you're not legally required, and sure, I know it's tough, but yeah, you're the a-hole. Your wife will suffer for the last few months of her life because of you. Your children will likely never forgive you. If I was your eldest son, I'd be driving to the hospital, legally collecting my mother into my care, and returning her to her legal home. I hope he does. I hope he realizes he can, because with an asshole for a dad like you, God knows your family needs a new father figure." Our next post is by user Unfair Raspberry 108, titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling an employee that pregnancy is not an excuse for low productivity?" So, I work in an office. Due to the nature of our work and our employer, we're not working remotely right now, where I supervise a team of 3 people. The end of the year is our crunch time, and it means that my entire team is putting more hours than normal, and everyone is expected to answer their phones and emails pretty much round the clock. Christmas accepted, of course. Most of my team is doing great, except for one woman who I'll call Kara. Kara told me 2 weeks ago that she's pregnant, and she's about 10 weeks along. The only reason she told me in the first place was because I had to write her up for not being as available as she needed to be. She was calling in sick at least once a week for the past 4 weeks, and when she was at the office, she was not 100% focused on her work. She explained that she has severe morning sickness, and that she's been vomiting multiple times per day, and some days she needed to take off. I agreed to work with her, and told her that she can come in later and stay later if she needs to get around the morning sickness, but she apparently is sick all day. I made other concessions too. I am allowing time off for doctor's appointments, and allowing her to take more frequent breaks throughout the day, and apparently she can no longer eat a regular lunch and must eat multiple times during the day? This all seemed perfectly reasonable to me, as long as she held up her part of the bargain and maintained her productivity during this stressful time. Well, she is not. She has called out sick once already since then, and she has not made herself available for calls during off hours. My other staff is staying at the office until 8 or 9 in the evening, but Kara is out by 6 and apparently goes straight to sleep when she gets home and keeps her phone muted during that time. We have had to scramble to cover for her. Her work quality has also suffered, as apparently she has difficulty concentrating due to headaches and won't take anything for them. I sat her down yesterday and relayed my concerns. She acknowledged how her lack of productivity has hurt the rest of the staff, but claimed that she is physically struggling a great deal. I told her that was no excuse, because she's only in her first trimester and barely even pregnant yet. I also questioned whether it was fair to the other women that she was using a normal bodily function as an excuse for low productivity. This is what women fought to counteract during the feminist movement. She said she understood and would try to do better. I told my wife about it, and she called me an a-hole, saying that I have no idea how hard pregnancy can be. I just think that it's unfair for an entire staff to pick up someone's slack because they made a personal decision to become pregnant. So, am I the a-hole? Yes, in my opinion, you're the a-hole. You absolutely dug yourself a deeper hole there with the whole women's rights movement thing, just putting that in her face. That kind of seems unnecessary. It's unfortunate that she's not able to pick up the slack, but unfortunately she is pregnant. You understand that. And you should understand that work has policies and ways around helping these people that are pregnant until they're no longer pregnant. You sound like you're not accommodating at all and not understanding that some people have worse pregnancies than others. This just really sucks all around from you. You're the a-hole. And in the comments, Trania86 says, "You're the a-hole. It sounds like she has HG. OP, you might not know what that is, but I'm still recovering from it. It hits you in the first trimester, and before modern medicine, you could die from it. That's not me being dramatic. It's a fact. You vomit so much you start to dehydrate. You can fall into a coma. You can die from malnourishment. I lost over 13% of my body weight in a month's time, was hospitalized 3 times, and it took me 6 weeks after the HG had passed to get me back on track physically. Your employee is sick. She may have chosen to be pregnant, but she didn't choose to get sick because of it. Whether she really has HG or not is up for a doctor to decide, but she needs support and medical aid, not a supervisor that complains about slacking because they don't understand how much of a strain her body is under right now. I'm going to say this loudly. You need to stop pushing her right now, because if she gets a miscarriage due to mental and/or physical stress, it will be your fault. If you're in the USA, then that's the a-hole too, because the laws don't protect sick and/or pregnant employees like they do where I live. And Portersby replies, "Can we take a moment and put aside the whole pregnant employee issue to acknowledge that OP is the a-hole regardless for how he treats his staff in general? Forcing your employees to work 12 hours during crunch time instead of bringing in additional help or paying overtime is really crappy. I mean, I realize times are especially tough right now, but it sounds like this has been the trend for a long time. And answering your phone around the clock? I just can't imagine a scenario where this is justified for an office job." And Fish and Whistle says, "You're the a-hole. Your wife is right. You have no effing clue what you're talking about. People like you are why we have to have anti-discrimination laws. I hope this is a troll." Oh god, I know, right? Quote, "I also questioned whether it was fair to the other women that she was using a normal bodily function as an excuse for low productivity. This is what women fought to counteract during the feminist movement." End quote. As soon as I read this, I knew this was a man who's using feminism to cover up his ignorance, lol. So, because vomiting is a normal bodily function, that means you should be able to work while throwing your guts out? Or are you commenting on the concept of being pregnant? What a stupid argument. Fever is also a normal bodily function by your standards, and so is dying. The term normal bodily functions in feminism is used to normalize periods and normalize women farting, pooping, and sweating just like men, not to force sick people to work. Quote, "I told her that was no excuse because she's only in her first trimester and barely even pregnant yet." End quote. Lol. Not even women who actually have experienced pregnancy are entitled to judge the difficulty of other women's pregnancies. All pregnancies are different, and some can bring about a horde of health issues, some lifelong. Are you her doctor? No? Then you literally have no idea what she's going through, whether it's normal or not, and how she should deal with it. I also couldn't help but notice this. She's not made herself available for calls during off hours. Is this allowed to be a requirement for employees? And if it is allowed just in general, I don't know what work laws you have, does her contract include having to be available during off hours? Or is it just an unfair expectation you have of your employees? Like everyone else in the comments, I really want this to just be a troll, but I feel like the unfortunate reality is that this is very common and prevalent in a lot of people's workplaces throughout the world even. It's ridiculous how people still get mistreated this badly, and we still put up with it. Why can't we just be like the French and just burn things when we disagree with how we're being treated? Anyway, our next post is by user FanciestAmphorose, titled, "Am I the a-hole for calling into work during icy conditions to keep my unborn baby safe?" So I work at a semi-popular fast food/casual dining cafe chain restaurant. I woke up this morning to an ice storm that was a bit worse than I expected it to be. I tried to get to work, but the roads are too slick, and my husband said it was too dangerous for me, being about 8 weeks pregnant, and we just turned around and went home. For some context, my family lives on a privately owned road that is not plowed or treated by the city. It's done so by a private company that takes their sweet time. The roads by our home are infrequently traveled, so they are some of the last to be plowed. I had been talking to a coworker, let's call them C, over text about how I couldn't make it in. They seemed frustrated, rightfully so. I'm their other person this morning, and offered other solutions, but they fell flat. C drives a big SUV-type car, and my family has a little hybrid, and C was already at work, and I felt guilty about even thinking about asking him to get back in this weather to get me. Now here comes the fun part. After I talked to my manager, who was understanding about everything, I get a Facebook notification from a different coworker. Let's call this one V. V proceeds to comment on an unrelated post telling me that I effed over their day by calling in. Whatever. V has always been a really nasty person to begin with that I tolerate to keep the peace. My husband comes riding in on his white horse, asking why V is being so rude to his pregnant wife. V proceeds to haul off on my husband, calling me a lazy coworker that half-asses everything at the store, and thanks to me they have a busier day. In V's defense, my job does overwork them. Followed by, whatever. Protect that grain of rice you're growing. As a jab at me being so protective of the baby I thought I was never going to have. Husband and V are still going back and forth on this post, and husband is also looking into filing harassment complaints on my behalf for everything V has said this morning and in the past about my lazy ass and useless clump of lifeless cells. Am I really the a-hole here for valuing mine and my baby's safety? I feel like I'm crazy. Edit. I didn't want to just openly admit this, but my pregnancy is basically a miracle baby after my husband and I were both considered to be infertile. Hence why my husband white-knighted for me when he normally doesn't. V brought the baby in this when they didn't need to. V and husband used to be friends, and he was honestly asking them why they were being so cross with me, which is another reason why he got involved. So thank you for the concern if you were worried he was like a control freak or something. I've contacted HR about all this mess, and I'm doing my best to put it all behind me. And yes, V has been officially blocked and removed on Facebook. I only had V there to be polite, but that bit of me is in the rear, I guess. And edit 2, I noticed I misspoke above. Husband was not calling HR for me, he was simply looking for the numbers online since I didn't have them on hand. Edit 3, and for some extra clarification, I didn't tell my manager I called in due to my baby, even though he knows I'm pregnant and could probably guess that. What I said nearly verbatim was, I spun out and nearly went into the ditch right outside the house. Husband had to come help push the car back into the road, and he drove me back home. The roads are super unsafe right now, which is what happened, so it's not like I was lying to him. And edit 4, riding in on his white horse was used sarcastically. Even though I appreciate him for standing up for me, it was super annoying, and I'm thankful he had the decency to not throw around swear words and act just as aggressively as V. Yeah, this situation really sucks from all ends. It doesn't feel like there's much winning, simply due to the fact that you're trying to drive on ice, and I know that ice is different to snow. I've never lived in a cold country like that before, besides Belfast, but I know I would not drive on ice. I would not. I've seen those Russian car crash compilation videos, and I know even if you are prepared with snow tires and the likes, ice is an unforgiving bastard. It's unfortunate that it's led to this situation where it's blown up and you've had to hide so many details in the story, just telling us at the third edit at the end what exactly happened. And that's completely understandable, but the fact is that this is just going to keep happening, and either you have to leave this job and find something that you can work from home and do, or you're going to have to move somewhere where the ice isn't going to be on the road and you can get to work. I'd say this is unfortunate, that this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's unfortunate that this has happened. It seems a little self-inflicted because you're in an area that is going to be iced and it's not going to be fixed for a little while because you're so far down on that priority list. Obviously, V is an asshole for saying what he said online, but that's out of understandable frustration if this has been something that repeats. And it's up to you as an adult in this situation to find a way that's going to get you to work. And say that you had a medical emergency while you have that baby. How are you going to get to a hospital if there's bloody ice on the road? How are you going to help yourself in that situation? Everyone sucks here. Now in the comments, GoodCrisps73 says, everyone sucks here. V was rude. You sound as if you're using pregnancy as an excuse. I had to look twice. I thought you were 8 months gone, not 8 weeks. And if you can't afford a big SUV, then get snow chains and winter tires. What will you do if you urgently need to get out next winter when the baby is born and the roads are icy again? Grow up. Thank you. OP is going to be one of those, the wind blew in the wrong direction and it hurt me because I'm pregnant. What will she do if she has a medical emergency while pregnant? OP, pregnancy is not an illness, and if you can't cope with the weather now, when it's only just January, heaven help you in mid-February when it's really cold. My name's not Molly replies, what? There is a massive difference between the wind blew in the wrong direction and a literal ice storm, making it very unsafe to drive. And in case anybody isn't clear, driving on a road covered in ice is very unsafe. 5 to 6 years ago, there was an ice storm in my city. The entire city shut down for 2 weeks because it was impossible to drive, bike, or even walk. They had to call in emergency services to deliver people their medication and oxygen tanks because people were literally trapped in their homes. Ice storms are absolutely no joke. Even if it wasn't as severe as an ice storm as that, what do you think OP could possibly do if her street hasn't been cleared or treated yet? It's a completely reasonable choice to not drive in a situation that puts her in danger, and it would be even if she wasn't pregnant. On top of that, she is pregnant. Do you know when a woman is at the highest risk of losing a pregnancy? The first trimester. That's why most people don't tell anyone they're pregnant until they're past 12 weeks, because the chance of losing the pregnancy goes way down. So I don't think it's unreasonable to be extra cautious at 8 weeks pregnant. A car accident could easily result in a miscarriage. I just want to know what planet you live on, where people who won't drive on ice is them not handling the weather. I live in one of the coldest places in America. We all drive in snow for half of the year because that's just our reality. We don't drive on ice because doing so is incredibly stupid. Dumb a-holes who won't live in Canada or a cold climate, or dumb a-holes who think you should risk your life to get paid minimum wage. I swear people are such bootlickers nowadays. IALOUS79 says, everyone sucks here. They were mean, however, You know you live on a private road which rarely gets plowed, so why don't you have a car which is suitable? Assuming this isn't a freak storm that only happens once in a decade. At 8 weeks, you would have to break your pelvis to injure your baby. If you were worried about that level of trauma, then no one should be driving. If you're at a point in the pregnancy where your uterus was out of the pelvis, I'd give more slack. If you weren't pregnant, would you have driven in? At that gestation, that's basically your answer as to what you should have done, assuming obviously that you weren't also sick due to the pregnancy at a level where you would have been home. In fairness, we own an SUV and have a private drive that is gravel, and we were stuck during a snowstorm and we had to call out. It happens. Doesn't make anyone an a-hole. Sometimes you can't afford to live where you want or the car you want. She works fast food. It's not like she chose a Ferrari. And that last comment does stick with me, especially in the judgment that I've given. I understand it's not easy to move when you don't have money, but in this situation you're going to lose your job if you don't find a reasonable solution. Thank God, as a result of last year, we are now seeing more work from home options opening up, so hopefully that could be an option for OP going into the future. Anyway guys, that's where I'm going to leave it today. I hope you had a good day, night sleep, whatever you're up to. Leave me some comments on this video, tell me what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.